Brad, thank you again for joining us. Really appreciate your time. How are you doing right now? How's Tracy? How are the kids?
Yeah. Well, thanks for asking again. I think we all have been sitting here the whole time thinking about the people that are on the front lines and that are really affected by this. We have not been, fortunately. Everybody in our house has been healthy and is doing well and adjusting to being home and together all the time. But, so we've got it easy. And our thoughts are with those who are living with a lot of stress right now because of all that they're doing, whether dealing with somebody that they know who's sick or out on the front lines working.
Well, I'm very glad to hear that the family is doing well. And Brad, the last time that we actually spoke was in Milwaukee. We were both working out in the hotel gym. And I remember kind of discussing with you potential scenarios of what was going to happen, if the team was even going to be playing the next day against the Bucks, or if they would fly back to Boston, wait a few weeks, and then fly back to Milwaukee to play. I have to ask, what was that night like for you, just as a head coach and everything that was going on in the news?
Well, yeah, I remember. I think you and I were probably in the workout room like at 5 or 5:30, and a couple hours later, the NBA got shut down. And I remember there was a little bit of anxiousness throughout the whole group about what exactly was going to happen in the near future, especially with Golden State having already said that they were going to play Brooklyn the next night with no fans. In fact, we had probably prepared as a staff or thought as a staff we were probably going to be in the same boat by the time 24 hours rolled around, and that we would be playing with no fans out in Milwaukee. And later on that evening was when the Oklahoma City-Utah game got suspended, and then ultimately the NBA season got suspended. So I think the thing that went through my mind is the same thing that was going through yours and everybody else's that was on that trip, Amanda, was how are we going to get back to Boston? And how are we going to get back to Boston safely and as quickly as possible? Because there was a lot of, there was a lot of unknown. And it turns out that, if we knew now what we knew then, right, we maybe would have shut it down earlier. But I give the NBA a ton of credit for saying, once we have a positive result, we are shutting this thing down and then going from there. And I think it, under Adam's leadership, and our owners and management and everybody else, I thought it was the right move. And, we were fortunate to get home later the next day.
Right. And I spoke to Zarin about that last week, about how just having some downtime can actually be really good for the players in terms of rest and recovery. Besides that, do you see any other positives for the players in just getting this more of an extended break?
I haven't really thought about that. I haven't really looked at that. I think the biggest thing is, like everyone else, you have a feeling of uncertainty just about when we're all going to be back, what the new normal will look like. You have a feeling of uncertainty for what you watch on the news every day and all the people that are dealing with this head on while we're sitting in our homes. So I think that I haven't really thought about it from that standpoint. Obviously, being off their feet, anytime that you can do that to an extent is a positive when you're talking about guys that put as much on their bodies as our guys do. But, I think that the challenge that comes with it is, maintaining the appropriate conditioning, the appropriate focus, the appropriate ability to pick right back up where we left off through a really unsettling, uncertain time. And so I'd say that as a team, we've been a lot more focused on us off the court and non-basketball related things, with the exception of trying to encourage the maintenance of conditioning.
You mentioned, I know that Zoom calls have been a big thing for this Celtics team. How else have you maybe been staying connected with the players right now, just to make sure that they're staying sound, both mentally and also physically?
Well, the Zoom calls have been really good. We do them about once a week, and, often have speakers. We've had a variety of speakers that have been excellent. And again, the focus is not basketball. And as luck would have it, in a lot of cases for us, a lot of the people that have spoken to our team have done, unbelievable things in their second and third careers of choice. And I think that that's really cool when you think about, these guys are 18, 19, 20 to 30 years old. It's Kimba's 30th birthday today. So now we have 3 30-year-olds on our team, and they've never had basketball taken away from them for this long. Me as a coach, I've never had basketball taken away from myself this long. And so it makes you think about other things, and it makes you think about how you can grow and improve yourself in other ways. And so that's been really good. And then we spend a lot of time in individual conversations, sometimes small groups, but I talk / text / Zoom, FaceTime, whatever, pretty much every week with most every guy. So it's, we're not, we're staying in touch. And I know the guys probably stay in better touch than any of us coaches do with them. And their assigned coaches do a great job of connecting. So I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about a chemistry factor. I think everybody will be and I think this will be the case with all 30 teams.
Well, with touching base with players, has there been maybe one guy that you've talked to the most during this time, or a player that's reached out to you the most, just wanting to check in or needing support or advice?
I probably won't go there just because I want to respect those relationships. But I think there's certainly been some that I've talked to more than others. And, we try to have a good pulse on our players, especially that are, especially early on, that are living in apartments and maybe don't have access to, being able to go outside and go for a jog or whatever the case may be during the early periods of this. But, again, it's been all focused for the most part off the court. We're really not, allowed to do anything with the exception of, the virtual strength and conditioning. So that's why we spend all of our time in our meetings with those guys on, on non-basketball topics. Now, some of that'll change as the NBA now is starting to open some facilities across the league, with very, very, very limited contact between, one staffer and one player.
You mentioned kind of focusing on off the court stuff. For a mental side of it, I know that athletes, they're so go and used to a very specific routine. And when I've talked to some of the players, they've said that it's been difficult because the season just stopped, right? And their routine completely changed with that. For a coach and trying to help these guys out, are you having them maybe read any specific books right now, listen to different podcasts, or, using certain apps?
Some of these guys do use some of the apps from the standpoint of, and I think across sports and across any industry, right? All the different apps that are designed to help you with your high performance and managing anything that takes away from that, right? But as far as routine goes, one of the things we talk about all the time is, if you have a routine, that's great, but you can't be like married to it, because the bus could break down on the way to the arena. You could get stuck in traffic. You may be sick that day, and you may feel better by game time. Like, you have to be able to compartmentalize that this is the game, this is the task. We want to be as routine oriented as we can, but it's just not always feasible. And so this is this particular situation, as as COVID-19 shut down more and more businesses, shut down our league, became more real, I think, to all of us, then it affected everyone's routine. It's not an athlete thing, it's not a coach thing, it's an everyone thing. And so everybody's dealing with that. And I think that that's something that, as an athlete, the different, curveballs that come out of left field that you get used to hitting, I think are good preparation for times that are going to challenge you like this. And so, again, it's not about us. It's more about what's going on in the world. But I do think that, you know, guys are trying to find and create now a routine in this new normal that they can follow on a day-to-day basis.
I know that the players have been given bikes and weights to kind of help them work out at home and meeting with the trainers too. What else are they doing to stay in shape right now?
Well, we've got some good hills in Massachusetts, which is good. You know, so I think that they're doing, so they have a deal where they can get online and work out 5 different times a week. And so some of those are more focused on weight. Some of those are more focused on the conditioning aspect. Some of those are, you know, are dependent on what they have at their availability from a weight standpoint, right? But they're all voluntary. And, you know, some guys really get a lot out of that. And other guys have a routine that they've created that they are going to get a lot out of. The bottom line is, it's everybody's responsibility to try to maintain their strength as well as possible based on what they have available, and be a week away from their best shape when we get back together. And that's our 2 things. You know, you got a lot of guys riding the bike a lot more miles than they've ever ridden before. And, you know, we've got some different Peloton contests going on all the time. But other than that, you know, we're just trying to do what we can to be ready for when we get that call.
I was going to ask you, Brad, about the Peloton. How often are you using it? I know Gordon Hayward recently got one too.
A lot of our guys have them, and I think that's probably increased over the last 8 weeks. As you know from traveling with us, it's often a race to the workout room, because most hotels have maybe one,
Yeah.
sometimes 2, and we've got about 8 or 10 people in line to try to use those things. And now it'll probably be more, because I think that's been you know, an alternative way of working out during this time. For me personally, you know, I've probably been outside more in 45-degree weather in April than I've ever been in my life. And, you know, and didn't use that as an excuse to get outside and do things outside. But any days that are, you know, raining or whatever the case may be, those are my big Peloton days. But that Peloton gets a lot of use in our house.
Yeah. I think it's wonderful. Now, are you doing workouts with the players at all on that?
No, you know, we're not. So those are all of our workouts are designed so that everybody can do it with the bare minimum. So our strength coaches have designed weights and strength workout or conditioning workouts for each person individually. So they could certainly say, hey, on Thursday, instead of getting online and doing something virtually, why don't you get a Peloton workout in, and as a suggestion. But, you know, from my standpoint, no, I've got a 14-year-old that I have enough trouble beating in all these different athletic endeavors. I'm too old to deal with some of these guys. And it was never good enough anyways.
Brad, before we get to a few rapid fire questions, I just want to know more from a, you know, work-life balance, as everyone is trying to navigate this new normal. How has it been for you as a parent, being at home, but also at the same time, kind of trying to stay in that coaching mindset?
Well, we're fortunate. My kids are 5th and 8th graders, so their e-learning has been pretty continuous from the day that school stopped. There was a little bit of a transition period where our schools were getting used to this and our kids were getting used to this, but they're pretty self-sufficient. You know, we don't have kindergartners and 1st grade or pre-Ks, and I know that those parents have probably a lot more on their plate than our 2, but our 2 are pretty good about doing what they're supposed to do and getting their work done and moving on to what's next. And so for us, you know, I'm usually able to do all of my prep work for our team and for what we hope would be ahead, you know, in the mornings and early afternoons as our kids are getting their stuff done. And then I'm able to spend time with Tracy and the kids, where Tracy and I are setting records for miles walked, and our kids are, you know, I've probably juggled the soccer ball more in the last 8 weeks than I have in 30 years. And And then we're really fortunate because we have a hoop at home. So my 14-year-old is on that all the time. And I've gotten a chance to like work him out and, watch him get better, and he kicks my butt. And I don't know, it's a good relationship. We're a pretty competitive family. So we pretty much from 2 or 3 o'clock on, we're competing. So our joke here is that 2 people go to bed pissed every night. So it's usually 2 winners and 2 losers, and it's hard to figure out who it's going to be on a given day.
How competitive is Tracy?
Oh, really? Yeah. Don't let the smile fool you. She doesn't like to lose. And, if we've given our kids anything genetically, I'd say that that's what we've given them.
Brad, finally, just you had a conference call a few weeks ago, and you were talking about being at home, with your family and just educating your kids during this time. And I'm sure there's a lot of parents on this call. Yeah. How have you been navigating this in terms of educating them on kind of what's happening in the world right now and what's going on around them? Yeah,
I mean, I think we have felt the responsibility to do that. Obviously, because of my job and the fact that the NBA got shut down, and it was huge news that really, was followed by a lot of other shutdowns across the country. Our kids have been pretty alert to the threat, at least for a couple of weeks prior to that shutdown, just like we all were. I mean, we were having meetings with Dr. Napolitano. We were preparing ourselves for try to take care of ourselves. I don't think any of us understood the magnitude at that time. But we've tried to keep our kids educated on exactly how the world's been affected, exactly how Boston and Massachusetts have been affected, what we can do to be helpful, both with different organizations that we're really passionate about, but also by being there just as a support for the people that are living a more stressful life than we are right now, which is a lot of people. So I don't, we don't watch the news every minute of every day, but we certainly make sure that we take the time a couple times a week to update our kids on what's going on around them.
All right, we're going to shift now quickly to some rapid fire questions, Brad. We'll give you a minute for these and see how many we can get to, and then we will open it up for the season ticket member questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Favorite road city?
Indianapolis.
Favorite meal of all time?
Oh, man, that's a tough one. Pass.
Favorite player growing up?
Reggie Miller.
Greatest NBA team of all time?
I probably, so here we can go an extra minute, right? So
yes,
here's
I want to hear all this. So
I don't like the comparison world we're living in. I'm not big on it. I'm not big on comparing the teams or the players. I think as a result, we often lose sight of how great they all are. So if somebody's in that discussion, they're amazing. If one of the players is in the discussion for greatest of all time, that's a big talking point right now with the MJ doc. Like, they're amazing. Let's just appreciate them for who they are. A couple years ago, I had a guy speak to our team, and he said, compete, don't compare. And boy, is that true when you're in it. Like, just get out of that comparison idea, because it's an unhealthy way for those of us that are in it to live. So I'm out. I'm passing on that question.
All right. So
how's that for a political non-answer?
I love it. That was some great advice. Favorite takeout place?
Favorite takeout place? Oh, yeah, it's the same thing as the food. I don't know what my favorite would be. So pass.
Are you trying to learn any new skills during lockdown that aren't related to your job?
I'm getting better with my footwork in soccer with my 10-year-old. I don't know that I'll ever be good enough to play in a 45 and over league, but maybe we'll give it a shot.
I don't know if this might be more for Tracy, but favorite thing to cook during lockdown?
We have done some different things, and our kids have assigned nights on a couple of different nights over this period. The thing that I enjoyed trying that we didn't do a very good job with was sushi.
Okay.
But we enjoyed trying. We had a great time trying.
I love that the kids are getting involved with helping cook too. That's great.
We limit it because those nights are often not the healthiest.
Favorite sport to watch besides basketball?
Favorite sport to watch besides basketball, I'd say soccer.
And finally, which Celtics player or staff member would you trust most to give you a quarantine haircut during this time?
So Kinsley did my haircut. So right now they would have to outdo her. We thought if there was any time to let her try, now was the time. So she did the last one, and it turned out reasonable. It has some work to do, so other than that, I would probably pick I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know the answer. I would pick a staff member though.
What staff member?
That's a good question. I'd say I'd pick somebody in the video room that was meticulous, even though I really don't care about my hair. So I'll narrow it down to them. So I'll go with Matt Reynolds. I trust Matt Reynolds would take it serious. He's probably better at haircuts than he was at coaches' challenges this year.
He has a very strict attention to detail, so I think that would serve him well.
There you go. He would definitely take his time and put his signature on his work, and I trust that he wouldn't do anything crazy.
All right, Brad. Well, thank you for that. We learned a lot about you. We are going to go now to the season ticket member questions. Question 1 from Harrison S. wants to know, if your years in Butler, or in your years at Butler, what was that has taught you, what has taught you the most when coaching for the Celtics?
Well, there's so much. There's so much. There's so many more similarities than differences. There are some very big differences, the schedule and the lack of practice time. You're coaching anywhere from 19-year-olds to 30-year-olds, to 35-year-olds, whatever the case may be. That's just everybody's at a different age and stage. So there are some differences, but I'd say a lot more similarities than not. Something that Coach Todd Licklider shared with me was a quote that he attributed to Lincoln, but I'm hearing it might be from Twain. So whoever said it, it was, I apologize for the length of this letter. I didn't have time to write a short one. And I'd say that has carried with me through both head coaching places, because I think as a coach, you have to work, and I always tell our assistant coaches this, we have to work and uncover every stone to prepare to deliver a concise, simple plan of attack. Because basketball is a fast-paced game with a lot of randomness, and we want everybody on the court to be able to be on one page, but to be able to play with a clear mind, and I think that's really important. As a player, I was a person that didn't always have a clear mind. I was thinking about what happened last. I was affected by a missed shot, whatever the case may be. So I think we try to do that as much as possible, and we think our role in that is simplifying everything as much as possible. And that also keeps people off their legs as much as possible during the season. If you can make an hour and a half practice, 50 minutes.
And just a quick reminder to season ticket members, you have the option below to submit your questions. So we're going to try to get to as many as we can. So make sure that you're still submitting those if you want your question asked. We have, for question 2, Jonathan Weiner, who wants to know, I teach music production and coach as well. And he wants to hear you talk about the topic of team building and how you're doing that. Yeah,
it's interesting, Jonathan. We actually I've spent a little bit of time with a performance psychologist at Juilliard, and have learned quite a bit about that world, which I am certainly not artistically gifted in any which way. But as far as the concepts of team building and the concepts of growing a group together, I think that there's a couple of things that you look for when you're talking about a person that's going to add to the team. And I'd say that number one is they're totally committed to winning. They are committed to doing whatever they can to add value to the good of the team. And at the same time, they're totally committed to their own personal growth. Those can sometimes be in conflict depending on the role that you have in the organization. You know, it's a lot easier for a basketball player to move into a featured role than it is for a person in a 4-person, jazz group, because that person at the lead that leads the ensemble may be there forever. You know, they may be there for 40 years or 50 years or whatever the case may be. You know, age usually gets in the way of basketball players performing much past their late 30s. But I think that if they can balance that and be reliable to adding that value, then I think, to me, that's how teams get built. There's a great commitment to your individual growth, but it's superseded by your responsibility to the group.
Eric Winton wants to know, you mentioned that guys have assigned assistant coaches. How is that decided? Is it personality, skill set, position?
Well, for us, we've changed a little bit about how we do our player enhancement. And we have a whole group of people in our, on our staff that are player enhancement coaches that are out on the floor with our guys that are able to not only rebound for them, put them through drills, put them through reads, but also get out there physically and defend and attack and make it so that it's a little bit more realistic than maybe I would be out there. And so there's a lot of people on our staff that are able to lend to that. And so we do a lot more now, what I would call small group work, where we're building community and getting reads in as part of our individual instruction. It's interesting. I think 20 years ago, most people were working out in 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 4-on-4 settings. And I think that's been very much replaced by the 1-on-0 summer workout with a skill instructor. And there's some great benefit to that. And so when we assign a coach to a player, it's for those 1-on-0 times where you're getting shots up, where you're working your ball handling, where you're doing things that you really don't need anybody else on the floor for. But I'd say now we're probably doing that 30 to 40% of the time instead of 60 to 70% of the time, because we really want to focus on our small groups so that, again, we can build team, build community, but work on the reads you're going to see at the end of plays on both offense and defense all the time.
This one's pertaining to more off the court. What's your favorite board game to play during this quarantine? I think all of us want to know that.
So, first of all, we've played Monopoly. We've played Racco. We have Indiana or the Midwest. Anybody that's from the Midwest knows card game Euchre. We've played a lot of that. But my favorite game that we've played is called Codenames. And it's one of those games that we figured out a way to play over Zoom with our friends, both here in Massachusetts, back home in Indiana. And the whole idea of like learning how to now connect online or being open to this new world, I think will be great for people staying connected beyond this, because I think that it's given us new creative ways to get together online. And for us, board games have been a part of that.
How does the game work?
Basically, you give a clue, and they have to guess which word it is based on your clue. So, bottom line is, it's a good game. If we have a couple of different couples that we play with that can play with the kids or play with adults or whatever the case may be. But it keeps you occupied. And there's a winner and loser, so that's good.
I know. I'm gonna have to look into it, get it, and play with my parents. So that's
good. Yeah.
All right, Brad. Well, thank you so much for your time and insight today and joining all of us. I really appreciate it and kind of giving us an update on how you're doing, how the team's doing, as well as the family.
Well, I appreciate you having me, Amanda, and thanks everybody for logging in. it means a lot, and it means a lot that all of you have been there to support us all the way through. And just wanted to reiterate how much we appreciate everybody on the front lines in Massachusetts, in the US, around the world, that are doing all of the stressful work while we're sitting at home and hoping that there's a return to normal at some point, and knowing that that chance lies with your great efforts. And so thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you for your continued support, and we hope to see you all soon.